This happened in late 2016 when I was in college. I was 20 at the time, living off campus in this crummy little duplex about a mile from school. Rent was dirt cheap because the neighborhood was mostly older homes that had seen better days, and the area got weird at night. Like, not super dangerous, but enough that you wouldn't want to walk around alone after 9 p.m. Anyway, this was in October. I remember because the trees were that perfect mix of orange and dead-looking, and I was already planning my Halloween costume with my roommates. I lived with 2 other girls, Kayla and Erin, but they were both gone that weekend visiting family. I stayed behind because I had a group project and just wanted the house to myself for a bit. I liked being alone. I liked the quiet. Friday night, I was up late, working on this dumb stats assignment. It was one of those nights where your brain's foggy and, you're just going through the motions to get it done. I was in the living room with my laptop, wrapped in a blanket, just vibing with some lo-fi stuff playing quietly on my Bluetooth speaker. Around 1:30 a.m., I got up to grab a snack. When I passed the front door, I noticed something that made me stop. The porch light was off. We always left it on. It was kind of a roommate rule since the front yard was shadowy, even in daylight. I chalked it up to the bulb burning out, but I remember pausing for a second longer than I normally would have. Just staring at the peephole like something felt off. But I brushed it away. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a yogurt, and sat back down on the couch. I had just reopened my laptop when I heard a faint sound, like a shoe scuffing against concrete, close enough that it pulled my attention. I muted the music and sat still. Nothing. I figured maybe it was a raccoon or something. We had them around the dumpsters sometimes, and they weren't shy. But then there was a second sound, more of a shuffle, and it was right outside the front window. Now I should explain. Our living room window looked out onto the front yard, and it had these half-busted blinds that never sat right. You could technically see in if you were tall enough and close enough to the glass. So I froze. Not full panic, just that hyper-aware, tight feeling in your chest. I sat there listening. Then, silence. For like a full minute, until this super soft tapping started. Not knocking, tapping. It was so light, I thought I imagined it at first. But no, it was rhythmic, like someone slowly brushing their fingernails or a coin against the glass. I leaned forward just a little and looked toward the blinds. Couldn't see anything, but the tapping kept going. Now I was getting that sinking feeling in my gut, that something isn't right kind of dread. I texted Kayla and Erin even though I knew they weren't around. Just something dumb like, someone might be outside LOL with a laughing emoji. Total reflex. Didn't want to feel like I was spiraling. The tapping stopped. Just dead silence again. I waited. I'm not even sure how long, but eventually I got up, walked to the door as quietly as I could, and flipped the deadbolt, just in case I hadn't already done it earlier. The porch was still pitch black. I didn't dare peek through the blinds. Something in my brain told me not to. About 10 minutes later, I started to feel like maybe I overreacted. Maybe it really was an animal, or the wind. I decided to go upstairs and try to sleep it off. I left the downstairs light on, though. Another reflex. Fast forward to around 4:30 a.m. I woke up needing to pee and went to the bathroom. That's when I noticed my bedroom window was unlocked. And look, maybe that sounds like nothing, but I always locked my window. Always. Not because I was paranoid, but because the latch was old, and I was worried it might fall open if the wind kicked up. I know it was locked earlier that night. I'm 100% sure. I locked it immediately and checked the rest of the windows upstairs. The one in Kayla's room was cracked open. I went back to bed but didn't sleep the rest of the night. I just laid there listening. For what? I wasn't even sure. The next day, I told Kayla and Aaron when they got back. They both kind of shrugged it off, made some jokes about me watching too many horror movies, but we replaced the porch light bulb, and Kayla stuck a broom handle in the window track in her room so it couldn't be opened from the outside. I tried to let it go, but here's where it gets worse. 2 nights later, we all went to bed early because we had 8 a.m.s the next morning. I had earbuds in, half asleep, when I got that feeling again, like something was off. I took out one earbud and heard the same tapping I had heard before, but this time on Kayla's window. I waited, listening, and suddenly there was a weird scraping sound, like someone dragging something along the siding. I texted the group chat, just, "Do you guys hear that?" Aaron replied right away, "What the fuck was that?" I jumped out of bed and ran into the hallway. Kayla's door opened at the same time. She looked freaked. Aaron came out too. None of us said anything for a second, just stood there listening. And then Kayla whispered, "Someone just looked in my window." She had blackout curtains but hadn't drawn them all the way. Said she saw a face, just the outline, like a silhouette, pressed up against the glass before it vanished. We called campus security even though we lived off campus. They came out, looked around, and found nothing. No footprints, no signs of forced entry. They told us to call the city police if it happened again, then left. Real helpful. We started locking everything like we were prepping for war. Deadbolts, window bars, even put little alarms on the windows that beeped if they opened. But the weirdest part came the following weekend. I was doing laundry in the basement. It was unfinished. Concrete floors, exposed beams. Creepy as hell even on a good day. We kept the washer and dryer down there. And I was folding a load when I heard a sound behind me. A floorboard creaked. I froze. Now there was only one way down to the basement, the stairs. And I would have heard someone come down. But that creak came from the back corner, near the old furnace we never used. I turned slowly, thinking maybe a mouse or something had scurried across the floor. But then I saw a second shadow. Mine was cast on the wall in front of me from the overhead bulb. But next to it, faint, slightly shorter, was another. I turned around so fast I almost fell over the laundry basket. Nothing was there. I sprinted up the stairs, slammed the basement door, and wedged a chair under the handle. We never went down there again. That same week, I started getting calls from an unknown number. They never left a voicemail, never said anything when I answered, just breathing. Always at night, always after midnight. It eventually stopped after a few weeks, but to this day I don't know who it was. We moved out by the end of that semester. I still double-check every window before bed. Still think about that shadow sometimes. I never saw a face, never caught anyone in the act. But I know someone was there, and I'm pretty sure they never left the first night. I wasn't going to share this, but honestly, I think about it almost every day. And maybe writing it out will finally let me stop carrying it around like a secret. This happened about 6 months ago. I'm 25, live alone in a decent apartment complex in a quieter part of the city. I work at a late-night coffee spot a few blocks from my place. The hours suck. I usually close, which means I'm walking home sometime between midnight and 1:30 a.m., depending on how fast we clean up. But it's a straight shot, maybe a 10-minute walk tops, and I've always felt like I knew the area well enough to be safe. I never had a reason to feel paranoid until that night. It was a Thursday, cold, early spring. And I remember it had rained earlier because the sidewalks were still damp and shiny under the streetlights. I was tired, carrying my backpack and the leftover sandwich I'd swiped from the break room, just trying to get home and collapse into bed. I wasn't wearing headphones. I usually don't at night. I like to be aware. And that probably saved me. About 2 blocks from the shop, I passed a guy standing on the corner outside a dark storefront. He was wearing a gray hoodie, jeans, white sneakers. Hood up. Seemed like he was smoking something. Maybe a vape, maybe not. I didn't think much of it. Until I passed him and heard his footsteps fall in behind mine. I didn't panic. Not right away. It's a city. People walk all the time. But something about the pace of his steps felt intentional. Not fast, not loud, just matching me. I crossed the street. He crossed too. I slowed down and pulled out my phone, pretending to check something. He slowed too. That's when my heart started pounding. I wasn't far from my building, maybe a block, but I didn't want to lead him straight to my door. I took a right instead, looping around the back of a row of duplexes, hoping he'd keep walking if I acted casual enough. He didn't. His footsteps got closer. I picked up the pace, turned again, this time toward my building's alley side entrance. We have a back gate that leads into the courtyard. I figured if I could just make it there and slam it behind me, I'd be fine. I never made it that far. Right as I passed this narrow walkway between 2 houses, I felt a hand grab the strap of my backpack. I don't even remember screaming. It was pure instinct. I yanked forward. The strap slipped off my shoulder, and I spun around. He grabbed my arm this time, hard. I'll never forget his face. Close shave, late 30s maybe. He didn't say anything, just looked at me like I was already his. He started pulling me toward the side of one of the houses. It was dark. That's when I heard a voice, loud from above. "Hey, I'm calling the cops." It was a man yelling from a second-floor apartment window across the street. I saw the glow of a phone screen in his hand. The guy holding me froze. For a second, I thought he might just keep going, like he didn't care. But then he let go. Ran. He sprinted down the alley and disappeared behind a dumpster. The man in the window kept yelling. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" I could barely answer. I just nodded and staggered back toward my building's back gate. The man on the phone stayed on the line with 911 and kept his light on me until I was safely inside the courtyard. I locked myself in my apartment, shaking so hard I dropped my keys twice. The police came about 20 minutes later. I gave them the best description I could. They said they'd seen a string of similar incidents recently. Women being followed, grabbed. But the guy always ran before it escalated. No one had gotten a good enough look to identify him. They took my statement and left. And that was that. The man from the apartment across the street, his name's Marcus. I baked him cookies the next week. He told me he didn't think twice about yelling. Just saw something that didn't feel right and acted on instinct. I think about that every time I walk home now. What if he hadn't been looking out the window? What if I'd screamed and no one had heard? What if the guy didn't run? I still take the long way home. I still flinch when someone walks behind me too close. But I'm here. Because someone was paying attention when I needed it most. I want to preface this by saying that I really liked my job. At least I used to. I worked at this mid-sized tech company in Seattle, one of those modern glass box buildings with the open office layout, coffee bar in the lobby, and fake plants everywhere to make it feel more zen. I was in marketing, and our team was mostly chill. We weren't best friends, but we got along well enough. Joked around in meetings, shared Spotify links, all that. There was one guy on my floor named Jared. He wasn't on my team. I think he worked in IT. But our desks were in the same section, and we saw each other a lot. He was maybe late 30s, average looking, kind of quiet. Always wore these button-ups tucked into jeans, like he'd just stepped out of a mid-2000s office supply catalog. At first, he seemed harmless, a little awkward, but polite. I'm not the type to assume anything weird unless someone gives me a reason. He used to ask questions here and there. What I was listening to, what snacks I liked from the vending machine, whether I wanted him to help carry anything when I came in with too much. It didn't feel flirty, just socially off. But then he started staying later and later. I work late sometimes. It comes with the territory. And he started hanging around after hours too. Every time I'd leave at 8 or 9 p.m., I'd see him at his desk, always finishing something up. After it happened 3 times in a week, I mentioned it, half joking. "Man, you're working later than I am these days." He didn't even look up, just said, "It's just easier when it's quiet." Then, one night around 9 p.m., I walked to the elevator and saw him standing there already, just standing by the doors like he'd been waiting. We rode down in silence. When we reached the lobby, I turned toward the parking garage. He followed. I turned and said, "You park down here too?" He nodded. "Yeah, near the west exit." That's where I parked. Still, I brushed it off. Could be a coincidence. Until the next time, and the time after that. It became a pattern. I'd pack up, leave, and somehow Jared would also be ready to leave, at the exact same time, despite not interacting with me all day. One night, I decided to test it. I stayed at my desk scrolling on my phone for 40 minutes after I was actually done working. Then I grabbed my things, left casually. Sure enough, as soon as I hit the elevator, there he was, not coming out of the bathroom, not just finishing up a call, just there, waiting again. Something in my gut said, this isn't a coincidence anymore. That night, when we reached the garage, I pretended I forgot something upstairs and doubled back, hid behind a pillar, watching. Jared didn't go to his car. He stood by mine like he was memorizing something. I left through the other exit and called an Uber. Didn't drive home that night. Next morning, I reported it to HR. They were polite, concerned, said they'd look into it, asked me if Jared had ever touched me, followed me off-site, said anything inappropriate. I said no, nothing concrete, just patterns that felt off. They said they couldn't do much without an incident, just that they'd keep an eye out. So I changed things up. Started taking earlier shifts, parking in different spots, leaving through the front entrance instead of the garage. It worked for a while. Then one evening I got back to my apartment after work and found a post-it note on my door. It just said, "The earlier shift suits you." I felt sick. I didn't know for sure it was him. No handwriting sample, no camera footage, nothing to prove it. But who else would it be? I emailed HR again, begged them to take it seriously. This time they told me they'd issue a formal notice for him to stay away from my work area. That's it. But then, 2 days later, I stayed late again. I didn't mean to. I got stuck on a deadline and completely lost track of time. When I finally packed up around 9:15, the office was almost completely dark. Except for Jared's desk light, he wasn't there. The elevator was still active. So I used the stairs, In the garage, I kept my keys in one hand, my bag over my shoulder, phone in the other. The whole time I was listening. No footsteps, no doors, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the buzz of blood in my ears. When I reached my car, I looked around once more. No one. I unlocked the door, got in fast, locked it immediately. Then I saw the passenger door handle move. Someone was trying to open it. I screamed and hit the horn. The sound echoed through the garage. The figure, definitely Jared, ducked low and ran between two cars, disappearing behind a pillar. I floored it, didn't even look back. HR called me the next morning before I could even report it. Turns out he had been caught on one of the security cameras lurking in the garage after hours. Not just around my car, but multiple cars over the last few weeks. When they confronted him, he didn't deny it. Said he was just concerned about employee safety, that he liked making sure no one was walking alone. He was let go the same day. I used to love going to the mall alone. I know that sounds weird, but it was like this peaceful reset button for me. I could wander, window shop, grab a pretzel, zone out for a couple hours and just not think. It was my quiet time. I don't go anymore. This happened last summer, around mid-July. It was hot as hell, one of those muggy days where everything feels sticky, even in the shade. I had the day off, didn't feel like doing anything productive, so I decided to hit the mall and waste time. Maybe buy a new pair of sneakers if I found something on sale. Got there around 2 p.m. Pretty normal crowd. Families, teens, people hiding from the heat. Nothing stood out at first. I wandered for about an hour, picked up a pair of leggings and a hoodie, then hit the food court. Sat down at a small table near the window with my tray. I was on my phone scrolling when I felt this weird prickling sensation, like someone was watching me. You know that instinct you get? Not fear exactly, but a shift, like something in the background changed. I looked up and saw this guy sitting 2 tables down, alone, not eating, just kind of facing my direction. He wasn't staring directly at me, but close. His eyes were on his phone, but he hadn't touched it in minutes. No earbuds, just sitting. He looked mid-30s, clean-shaven, black baseball cap, gray tee, completely unremarkable. The kind of guy you'd forget instantly, which is probably what made it worse. I brushed it off, took a couple more bites. When I glanced back, he was gone. I figured maybe I was just being paranoid. It was a crowded place. Could have been nothing. I threw out my trash, wandered a few more stores, and then, around 4 p.m., headed toward the garage. My car was parked on the 2nd level, kind of a weird spot near the back stairwell. The place had cameras and security signs everywhere, so I never thought twice about it. The walk from the escalator to my car was maybe 100 feet. That's when I heard footsteps. Soft, quick ones, just behind me. I slowed. So did they. I turned and saw the same guy from the food court. He froze when I looked at him, not like he was startled, but like he'd been caught mid-thought. I said, "Can I help you?" He smiled. "Didn't mean to freak you out. Just thought I'd say hi. I saw you sitting alone earlier." "Were you following me?" He laughed a little, short, fake. "Nah, just happened to be parked this way." I didn't respond, just turned and walked faster toward my car. I heard his steps again, matching mine. I got to my car and hit the unlock button twice, got in fast, and locked the doors immediately. He stopped a few feet away, stood there like he was waiting for me to roll the window down. I didn't. He stood there another few seconds, then walked past my car toward the stairwell. I sat there, heart racing, trying to decide if I should drive off or wait. I was trying not to panic, but everything felt off. Then I checked my side mirror. He hadn't gone down the stairs. He was standing just out of sight behind the pillar, watching me. I snapped a picture with my phone. The mirror view caught just enough of his shoulder and hat. Then I threw the car in reverse, peeled out of the garage, and didn't stop until I was halfway home. Later that night, I uploaded the photo and shared it in a local women's safety group on Facebook, just in case anyone else had seen him. 3 people commented that he looked like a guy who'd been reported at another mall 2 towns over, following women to their cars, pretending to ask for directions, then trying door handles when they weren't looking. Security never caught him. No plates, no confirmed name. I reported it the next day with the photo, my receipts, and the timestamp for my mall app's parking notification. The staff said they'd look through the footage. I never heard back. I'm the kind of person who thrives on routine. After work, I'd go for a run. Same time, same streets, same loop through my neighborhood just outside of Denver. I've been doing it for over a year now, and until last spring, I never felt unsafe. The route was quiet but familiar. Down my block, across the park trail, past the elementary school, then a long loop back through the residential stretch. It took maybe 35 minutes, depending on how slow I was dragging myself that day. Most of the time I had music in, but I always kept the volume low enough to hear my surroundings. I first noticed the guy in the windbreaker about 2 weeks in. I thought he was just another regular. There are a few people I see often enough to nod at. Older folks walking their dogs, some teenage skaters, the usual. But this guy stood out because he wasn't doing anything. He never had a dog, a phone, or even earbuds. Just stood around, by the park at the edge of the trail, sometimes on a corner near the school fence. Same outfit, baggy dark windbreaker, hood up even on warm days, jeans, running shoes. Never smiled, never looked away fast when I caught him watching. At first I figured maybe I was being paranoid, but over the next few nights I started switching up my path. Nothing too obvious, just reversing the loop or cutting through different streets. And he was still there, never close, never chasing, but always within sight. Once I got home, I'd usually do a quick cool down, go inside, lock the door behind me, and pull up my porch camera to make sure no one followed me. It was kind of a ritual at that point. Check the cam, breathe, move on. Then one night, this was a Thursday, I finished my run, stepped onto my porch, and went to unlock the door like always. I glanced up at the camera. The little blue recording light was off. Weird, I thought. Maybe a glitch. I opened the app, tapped into the live view, and the screen was pitch black. I stepped back, looked again, and that's when I saw a piece of black electrical tape was covering the lens. Perfectly placed, round, centered, cut clean. I stood there, frozen. My brain ran through the usual checklist. Had I done that? Maintenance? A prank? But no one else had a key, and I hadn't touched the camera in days. I peeled the tape off and checked the footage. Nothing recorded past 3:47 p.m. No notifications, no alerts, no motion, just dead space. That whole night I barely slept. Every creak of the house felt louder. Every shadow looked like someone waiting to be seen. The next morning I filed a maintenance report just in case. Maybe it was someone from the complex. Maybe it was dumb luck. I still didn't want to believe it was him. That night, I skipped the run. Stayed in, watched a movie, kept the porch light on. Around midnight, I checked the live feed again. Black screen. I ran outside, heart in my throat. The tape was back, same exact cut, same placement, same clean seal. That's when I called the cops. I don't even remember what I said, just that someone was messing with my security camera and I thought I was being followed. The dispatcher stayed calm, asked for details, and sent out a unit. The officer that showed up was nice enough. Took notes, checked around, even looked at the bushes and the gate. But there wasn't much he could do without footage or a face. I showed him screenshots from the previous day's feed, before the camera was taped, but nothing looked out of place. No clear shots. No shadows. Just my quiet street. He told me to keep the lights on, install another camera if I could, and report anything else immediately. So I did. I bought a second camera the next morning, one of those tiny motion-activated ones you can stick on a window. I placed it facing toward the porch, just under the awning, hidden from view. That night I went for a short run. Nothing major. Just around my street, checking over my shoulder every few minutes. No sign of the guy. But when I got home and checked the new camera, it caught him. Not clearly. Not his face, but his shape. The same windbreaker, the same hunched posture, walking up the driveway just after midnight. He looked up at the original camera, pulled out a piece of tape and pressed it down slowly like he'd done it before. Then he just stood there, staring straight at the door. He stayed for over 4 minutes. Then he turned and walked off into the dark. I sent the footage to the police. They came again, this time more serious. I gave a full statement. They said they'd add a patrol to my area, but unless he came back or did something worse, there wasn't much they could charge him with yet. So, I did the only thing I could. I stayed somewhere else. I called my sister, packed a bag, and left that night. We watched the footage again together on her TV. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she asked, "Do you think he's been watching you inside too?" That thought hadn't even crossed my mind yet. But once she said it, I couldn't unthink it. The living room blinds, the tiny bathroom window, the reflection from my phone when the lights were off. What if he already knew everything? I haven't been back since. The lease ends next month. I'll pay whatever I have to just to leave it behind. I don't want to wait around for the next piece of tape. Because the scariest part wasn't him taping the camera. It's that he was doing it so confidently, like he'd already tested the limits, like he knew exactly what he could get away with, before anyone would believe me. Before all of this, I never thought about how much access we give strangers. Not just in the obvious ways, like sharing locations or tagging places in real time, but in the way our homes are built now. Smart everything, phones, TVs, security systems, thermostats, all connected, all logged in, all vulnerable. I live alone in a mid-rise apartment complex in a decent area. It's a newer building, built within the last 10 years. Wood floors, giant windows, digital locks, and those wall-mounted touchscreens that let you adjust lights, AC, even buzz people in from the lobby. When I moved in, the leasing agent gave me a little tablet preloaded with all the building's systems. Said it was the future. Turns out the future is horrifying. This started when I matched with a guy on Hinge named Nate. He was normal, Tall, bearded, liked dogs, worked in IT consulting, which I now realize I never asked much about. We went for drinks on a Friday, and it was fine. No red flags, no creepy vibes. I didn't feel a spark, but I wasn't uncomfortable. We didn't kiss, just a quick hug and a get home safe. Over the next few days, he kept texting. Memes, random questions, asking if I wanted to hang out again. I politely said I was busy. Then a few days later, I said I didn't really feel a connection and wished him the best. He replied with, "Totally fine. Was great meeting you." That was it, or so I thought. About a week later, weird things started happening in my apartment. First, it was the AC. I'd wake up sweating in the middle of the night and see it had been turned off completely. The next night, it was blasting at 60 degrees. I figured it was a glitch, called maintenance. They reset the system. Then the lights started flickering. Not in the horror movie way, more subtle. They'd dim to a near glow when I was in the shower, or I'd turn off the kitchen light before bed, and it would be on again when I woke up. I thought maybe I was just distracted. Maybe I forgot. Then one night while I was watching TV, the screen changed inputs by itself. Just switched to the built-in camera view, which I didn't even know existed, and showed a blank, grainy image of my living room. I grabbed the remote, changed it back, and tried to laugh it off. But the next day, I got a text from an unknown number. It just said, "Cute pajamas." I froze. I had been wearing a faded old tank top and sleep shorts the night before. Alone, curtains drawn, TV on. I replied, "Who is this?" No answer. I went to check the smart hub on the wall, the tablet that controls everything. When I tapped into the device connections tab, I saw a second user profile. NATE. I don't know how he got access. Maybe from the first time he came over, briefly, to pick me up for the date. He was only in the entryway, but maybe he saw the login screen. Maybe he mirrored the device. Maybe I had auto-connect on. All I know is he had remote access to everything. I called the building manager. She said she'd escalate it to their tech team. In the meantime, she walked me through how to disable all access points and set up new credentials. I deleted the profile, reset everything, reported the number. I also called the police. They told me unless he made a direct threat, there wasn't much they could do. Not with just a text and no physical proof of intrusion. That weekend, I stayed with a friend. When I came back 2 days later, I noticed my bathroom cabinet was open. I hadn't touched it. Nothing was missing, but someone had clearly gone through it. The makeup bag was unzipped. The razor I always kept in the shower was moved to the sink. Then I saw my toothbrush. Wet. I hadn't used it since Friday. That night, I pushed my couch in front of the door, set up a new indoor camera that only I had access to, and tried to sleep. At 3:17 a.m., I woke up to a click. Like plastic, software sharp. I reached for my phone and opened the camera feed. He was inside, walking through my kitchen, calm, not hurried. He opened the fridge, looked around, then turned toward my bedroom. That's when I screamed, "Get the f*** out!" as I grabbed the nearest thing, a lamp, and stood by the door. He stopped. I could see his eyes adjusting in the dark. And then, without saying a word, he smiled, like it was a joke, like I was overreacting. I hit the emergency call on my phone. He backed away slowly, then bolted for the door. The cops came fast, like 5 minutes fast. He was still in the stairwell when they caught him, trying to act confused, like he didn't know where he was or how he got there. but my camera footage said otherwise. He was arrested on the spot. They found a second phone on him, which had folders of screenshots from my devices, thermostat settings, lighting schedules, clips from my TV camera, photos from my mirror. He had been watching me for weeks. He pled guilty to unlawful surveillance, breaking and entering, and stalking. Got sentenced to 18 months. I moved. I don't live in smart apartments anymore. Nothing connected, nothing remote. I double lock everything. I check every device before I buy it. Sometimes people still ask me how he got in, but that's not the scariest part. The scariest part is knowing he never physically broke anything. He just watched, waited until I felt safe again, and then walked right through the front door. He pled guilty to unlawful surveillance, breaking and entering, and stalking. Got sentenced to 18 months. But that wasn't the end of it. A few weeks later, I got a call from the detective handling the case. Turns out Nate had done this before. Almost the exact same thing. Different woman, different city. He'd matched with her through a dating app, gained access to her home's smart system, and started manipulating things little by little until he eventually showed up uninvited. She filed charges. He was arrested, did time, and was released on parole less than a year before I met him. What he did to me? It violated his parole, which means he didn't just get 18 months. He went back for the full sentence from the previous conviction, plus the new one. He's now serving 6 years in a state prison. They said he had a documented history of mental illness, obsessive behavior, and digital stalking, a few restraining orders, a sealed juvenile record. But somehow, he was still out there, matching with women like me, slipping through the cracks like nothing happened. And the scariest part? When they searched his phone history, they found more names. You always hear people say, trust your gut, but no one really tells you what to do when your gut's screaming and you still can't prove anything. This happened last fall. I had just gotten out of a rough relationship. The guy, Eric, was possessive in small, almost forgettable ways. The kind of guy who needed to know where I was all the time, even if it was just Target or a friend's house. At first, I mistook it for him being involved, caring, protective. It wasn't that. We dated for about a year before I finally ended it. He didn't yell, didn't cry. He just sat there and said, "You'll regret this." I laughed at the time, thought it was just ego talking. I was wrong. The first time I noticed him again was at my gym, which was weird because Eric hated gyms, said they were overrated and too performative. And yet there he was, walking in just as I was finishing up on the treadmill. I caught him in the mirror. He didn't approach me, just made eye contact, didn't even blink. I went home and blocked him on everything, Instagram, Venmo, even LinkedIn. The second time was at my job. I work in a small boutique downtown, pretty quiet, mostly regulars and tourists. It was a Tuesday morning, totally dead, and I saw him standing across the street, leaned up against a lamppost, scrolling his phone like he wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. I called the manager and went to the back room. When I came back out, he was gone. The third time, I was at my best friend's apartment across town, a place Eric had never been to. We'd been drinking wine, watching garbage reality TV, and around midnight, we heard a car alarm go off. Nothing major, just one of those quick honks. We looked out the window and saw my car lights flash. Someone had walked past and tapped the hood. He was across the street again, just standing there. That's when I lost it. I called the cops, reported him for stalking, explained everything. But they told me without proof, without a threat, a confrontation, something tangible. There wasn't much they could do. Just stay somewhere safe, they said. That night I didn't sleep. Something was wrong. He didn't just know where I worked. He knew where I worked after I changed my hours. He didn't just show up at my friend's place. He showed up the first time I'd ever driven there, which meant he wasn't guessing. He was tracking me. I tore apart my purse, checked my phone, looked through the laundry, the couch cushions, the corners of my gym bag. Nothing. Then I checked my car, took everything out of it. Glove box, trunk, under the seats. I was about to give up when I felt something underneath the rear wheel well. Taped. It was one of those white Apple AirTags. Brand new. Not scratched. Stuck with a piece of black duct tape to the inside edge where I never would have noticed it. I stared at it in my hand and started shaking. I didn't know what to do, so I drove straight to the police station. They scanned it, confirmed it was active, and confirmed it was registered to his Apple ID. Plain and simple. They arrested him that night. When they searched his apartment, they found notebooks, multiple, pages and pages of where I had been, times, dates, places I stopped, how long I stayed, who I was with. They found screenshots of my Instagram stories, even though I had blocked him. Turns out he'd made fake accounts, multiple. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that he had a second tracker, one he had planned to put inside my apartment. He bought it on the same day I broke up with him. He's in prison now. Turns out he had a prior stalking conviction in college. Sealed, expunged. But still happened. This time, the DA didn't let him walk. People think stalking is some kind of dramatic, obvious thing. A shadow behind your shoulder or a creep in a hoodie.